This program is very special. Our featured guest is from Tehran, Iran, and his name is Peyman Dayyani. He is a senior corporate executive for a company based in Iran and has extensive operations across the Middle East and Russia. So his name, as I said, is Peyman Dayyani. We first met about 10 years ago at the Global SHRM Conference, Society of Human Resource Management in Las Vegas. We just happened to be seated, happenstance, on the transport bus from the hotel to the convention center. At that time, Peyman was in charge of Africa and the Middle East, working for Nokia. And he was in the global HR section, as I was, and we just hit it off. And, since that time, we've stayed in touch, and he has since been on our radio talk show. He has posed for an interview for our Global HR magazine several years ago. And now, for the first time, we're doing this special interview. And today is the date, the month is March 2021. And I want to say something about this program coming up. The transmission, the electronic transmission from Iran is spotty. That's caused by VPN issues. So what you're going to see is the authentic interview, not edited. We thought we would try to take out the slowness or the freeze screen situations, but the earnestness of not only Peyman Dayyani, but our other guest, Sandrine Bardot, who's publisher of compensationinsider.com. She's based in Dubai. She's originally from Paris. And Sandrine and I first met in Paris in 1999 when she was European head of Comp and Ben from Microsoft, and she spoke at our conference in Paris in 99. We've stayed in touch. She has since relocated into Dubai and has been there 13 years. So her perspective is key for this interview, as you'll find out. Finally, our special commentator today is from San Francisco, from the tech world, and that's Maryann Hrichak, and she's an anthropologist, but also in charge of immigration and all things connected with global transfers for a French-based corporation. So the program is a bit long, very involved, touches on personal issues, touches on the role of women in Iran, touches on the compensation and benefits issues for working from home and performance management. And we learn all about Mr. Peyman Dayyani. Thank you. Enjoy the show. And get back to me and tell me if you like it or if you don't like it. I welcome you.
Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
Cube Monk, featuring the world's first smart cube. Track your goods with our advanced GPS system. Welcome to the future of moving and relocation at cubemonk.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by heirs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at heirs.com.
Insured Nomads provides protection and peace of mind with health insurance, travel insurance, group, or tailored insurance for the globally mobile. Visit us at insurednomads.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Become a global player in your field.
Cross Culture to Go provides virtual support for your global business and career success.
We can help you thrive in 140 plus countries and markets.
On the web at crossculturetogo.com.
This is Ed Cohen in Southern California, and this is Global TV Talk Show, a news product of globalbusinessnews.net. Go and check it out. I think you'll be happy with it. We have a very special broadcast today. We're live from Tehran, Iran. Hello, Peyman Dayyani, welcome. And from Dubai, we have Sandrine Bardot, who's a compensation expert. And in San Francisco, we have Maryann Hrichak, who is involved in anthropology and humanity and is an expert in all things to do with international talent mobility. So, Peyman, thank you very much for making time for us tonight. It is evening where you are in Tehran, is that correct?
That's correct. As a matter of fact, I'm currently in Iran. It's evening, and it was a bit of the difficulty on the connection. Thank you very much, and hello to everybody. And I'm very happy to join you.
Very happy to have you. Yeah, very happy to have you, sir. So you are an old friend of ours. You were on the global broadcast last month, and here you are again, and thank you. And just so the viewers understand, Peyman Dayyani and I have met in the U.S. at an international SHRM convention many years ago, and we have stayed in touch over the years, and we did a magazine interview about 10 years ago, if I remember. And his experience is quite diverse at a senior level. At one time, he was in Africa. He's been in a lot of places, but one time in Africa with Nokia, running the country, I guess, or the continent. What were you doing there?
Well, I was in the head of the Middle East and Africa HR for Nokia. When Nokia started to expand its footprint in Middle East and Africa. And I was responsible for country entry for many countries in the region.
Yes, okay. And then also in your past, and we'll get to the future in just a second, and the present, but also in the past, you've been involved in the telecommunications business, and you were also involved in a very large privately held integrated energy corporation. And now you're with a global food company called Solico or Solico. Which is the right way to say that? Solico.
Solico.
Great. And tell us what your position is. I know it's very senior level at the C-suite, but more descriptively, you're involved in all things connected with administration and business services and people. But be more specific and tell us how you spend most of your time these days.
Sure. Let's first start describing the Solico. Solico is a startup in past 50 years. Was a startup by a person called Mr. Soleimani. That's the name comes from, the Solico, Soleimani company. And he started with 3 liters of the milk, and now he's running a company producing 3,000 liters, 3 million liters per day. and we have about 18,000 people.
Oh, I think we've lost the connection. Hopefully he'll be able to join us.
Too bad. I wanted to learn more about Celico.
Yeah, okay. You can go to his LinkedIn page
Okay.
and you will find that. Oh, hi there. Okay, welcome back.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, this connection is not really stable. Anyway, what I was mentioning is the Solico company is from the name Solico, come from its founder, Suleiman company. Currently, we have a footprint in Iran, Iraq, GCC, CIS, and Russia. And it's the 14 factories all around the regions, including in Iraq. And we produce all kinds of the food products, including the dairies, plus the meat, processed meats, chocolates, and so on. Currently, we have food, including in Iraq, and we produce plus the meat, processed all HR activities for the whole company in the region. Basically, the company started as a private owned, very homey, I call it, company. And it was very entrepreneurial kind of company. And now it's the midst of the transformation to become a corporate and having the corporate practices in place, especially in the 4 areas, which is in HR, obviously, in legal, in finance, and IT. IT started ahead of us, and now it has a very, very well-established IT system, including ERP systems and connecting about 5,000 users all around the globe, basically. In HR, we started about 3 years back and put in place all the basics of HR systems, policy, procedures in place. And currently we are looking into joining the projects which was implementing the ERP and integrating the whole HR with other activities within a company. We have expatriates and also we have impatriates all over these regions. We are managing these people around the world.
Wow, that's really interesting. So how is COVID impacting all of this? Are your plants open, or is everybody working from home?
Yes. We started about almost 14 months back when the first sign of the COVID started in the region, especially in Iran, was among the very early countries who faced the COVID and coronavirus around the region. Since we were in the food business, we had to put a lot of precautions. And I had experience in the SARS when I was with Nokia. And we had a very good training at that time how to deal with influenza and to deal with this pandemic type. And I took that experience and we implemented in the region and very robust plan because we could not close the plant. As a matter of fact, during the whole this more than 400 days, which we have been dealt with this pandemic, we had a very, very few. As a matter of fact, we had one case of the fatality in the whole 18,000 people, which is very rare compared to the national and regional statistics. But we have really put in control all the processes and procedures to make sure that we let very safe working environment for everybody. And that was our first priority. While we could not close anything, as a matter of fact, the consumption of the food stuff was gone very, very high because everyone was at home.
Right, I would think that it's an essential industry.
The cooking at home.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that was to deliver, to produce and deliver the food to the supply chain. It was a big challenge for the company. I can say it was difficult to have seen both work environment for
Yeah.
consumption of the food stuff. It was exactly audition boom in the region, and it was a very interesting for us to deliver to them, and they would be able to deliver to the home. Another one was the working workers and staff on the office setting, and to have this arrangement of the
Oh,
We will continue with Peyman when that connection is more secure. It's unfortunate it's so vague. As you could tell, he's in a very senior role, an HR role, dealing with COVID. Solico is an essential industry, so they've kept working, kept people employed. Peyman also said that there's only one fatality or one illness, wasn't sure. All this time and 400 days since the crisis began with them. He is involved very much with the business administration of Solico worldwide. They're heavily involved in Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Turkey, and across Russia, or CIS. They also had an operation in LA, Los Angeles here, but it has been closed for a while since the pandemic. Perhaps things will open up. In case you didn't know, following the
sorry.
fall of the Shah
Oh,
of Iran, many Iranians relocated into LA as part of a resettlement program that was encouraged and allowed way back when. And there's literally thousands of families that have become Americans and very involved in American industry. All these people with an Iranian background. As a matter of fact, next week I have a broadcast with the grandson of an immigrant from Tehran, who's now a US based immigration attorney and very successful. And I will alert you that that show will be coming up right after April, first week of April, and I'll invite you all to join us. It's quite a story. Okay, Peyman, I was just reviewing some of the things that you said because of the faulty audio. I said that you have been involved, you're currently involved at the very senior levels of Solico in business administration and legal and HR, of course, all things connected with people. And that your company is heavily involved in not only Iran, but in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Turkey, and across CIS. I also mentioned that you had an operation in LA, but as I understand it, it's not yet open from the pandemic. So, Peyman, if you could hear me okay, if you'd like to add to that and talk about some people policies.
sure. Thank you very much. It was a very nice recap and summarizing. I appreciate it. And I'm again apologize for this bad connection. To add this on the people policy, in general, in the countries in the region, with the exception of the GCC, most of the countries around West Asia are very new to the HR concepts, especially in Iraq and in Iran. And CIS, it's picking up, but the peak, the previous in past 20 years, there have been developed a lot of new practices in HR. But Iraq and Iran still, we have a long way to go to meet the standards of HR practices like CIA, like GCC, or in Europe, or to be exact, in US. What I have been involved in the region for past 20 or more years, I've been advocating the HR professional certification, including the SHARM certification and HRCI certification, to promote the HR practices in the region and groom and educate HR professional with the concepts of the international HR.
Oh, thank you. And to what extent are women engaged in senior level positions?
Ladies and women, so in general, in the regions, they are picking up the roles in senior level. The trend has started from GCC mostly, but now in Iran, and I think in Iran and Turkey, it has been a very
All right, the connection is weak. Let's jump to Sandrine. Sandrine, from your experience as a compensation and benefits expert, why don't you add to what Peyman was just saying about what your insight is from the GCC and in Dubai, and if you could give us any insight into Iran.
So a few years ago, when the sanctions were being discussed as being lifted, I actually partnered with my friend I was telling you before we started recording, my Iranian friend, to try and educate the HR community on how to do business with Iran. And I think from one of the challenges that we see as maybe multinationals, if we are to expand there, I think the main challenge would be one of language. English literacy is not very common in Iran because obviously has not been encouraged over there. And so that's one of the main challenges. I'm leaving on the side, currency and all those challenges. But the country has faced a huge devaluation in the past few years, but that has been accelerated with the impact of COVID. From personal knowledge that I have from people that I know who are in Iran, the beginning of the pandemic was very difficult there because in the beginning, while nobody really knew how to react to COVID, there was also a shortage of medicine in Iran, and that's why there were so many fatalities in the beginning of the crisis over there. But I think that the country has somehow managed to get things, I wouldn't say completely under control, but more under control. And Iran has some aspects where the government tries to help families. There are special subsidies for poorer families and so on. So that's a way for them to try. It's not always super effective. I mean, obviously, because the crisis is so unprecedented everywhere around the world. But at least they're trying to do something. And women tend to have a higher education success than men. There are more female graduates from universities, as far as I understand, in Iran. And a lot of people who also have a very technical background, lots of engineers and so on. And being French, I know that there were at the time some agreements with some of the French car manufacturers, to produce cars because it's a big market on in the country and so on. So with a good market for a local expertise on the technical aspects of engineering and so on. So that's all I can say. I've never been to Iran, unfortunately. I wish I can go one day. Maybe not while there is still the pandemic, but because we can't travel anywhere, but I hope to go one day.
Well,
So.
thank you for that.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
So, Peyman, in your absence, I asked Sandrine to talk from her experience about that. Peyman.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really, I got some part of his thing very good to hear that, and I think it was very correct. It has a very, very high participant in universities of the ladies and women in universities, especially in engineering disciplines. And it's a big opportunity to come in to the marketplace, even though the participation rate is very low still. On the managerial levels, some progressive and very advanced companies, especially the private sectors, are already eager to train and develop leaderships among their ladies and women's managers. But still, I think it's a long way to go.
Right. Thank you. So I want to talk about pay practices, all right, compensation, and what it looks like. I mean, things are so confusing now because of COVID. You know, Sandrine, could you address pay practices in different companies, in different industries, countries? It's all over the place, isn't it? There's nothing uniform.
Yes, so I think the pandemic has really shown that there are two concepts nowadays that are more important than ever if we think about how we reward employees and how we pay employees. The first one is the affordability, and that's impacted by the industry you're in. And obviously, if you're, a hand sanitizer manufacturer, you're probably doing better than a hotel industry, right, at the moment. So you would have different ways of reacting. And I think also the different countries have had different ways of adapting and reacting to the pandemic, closing more or less hard, more or less a long time, not the same in the same way from one country to another, from one wave of the pandemic to another, and so on. One of the things that I see, it's anecdotal. I don't have like statistics behind it, but from my discussions with other people and so on, we see two types of organizations, at least in the GCC. Those who will do quite significant salary increases in 2021 because they didn't do anything in 2020 and they had good market results because they are in one of those industries that did well despite the overall crisis. And so budgets are actually higher than what they used to be before the crisis because there's a kind of a catch up to be done. And also they want to recognize their employees for their efforts during the bad times. And of course, there are those other industries that are not going to do anything, who might even be engaging in doing further layoffs and so on. I mean, we see some of that as well in the GCC. What I've told to the latter types of industries, people that I know, I tell them, look, even if you don't do salary increases this year because your market is struggling, I think people can understand that. But I personally believe that you should still have a budget for promotions because you need to reward those employees that did very good last year and who were already due for promotion. In the past year, you didn't do the promotions because of the COVID, and those are your best performers and your potential people with potential. So you should still try to do something, even if you're targeting only like 5% of your employee population. But it's about risk management. I was talking to one of my coaching clients last week, and they really appreciated that concept of how to sell it to their management, to say, we can't afford to lose some of those people. One of the things that has had a huge impact in my part of the world, in the Gulf countries, is that for the first time, as far as I know, maybe in their history, the countries like UAE, for example, is the recruitment pool is inside the country only. Those are countries where 80 to 90% of the population is coming from outside the country. And for the first time in their history, they're recruiting only with people who are inside the country. And so obviously, sometimes you can have some expectations when your recruitment market is the whole world to really find that super extraordinary, we say a duck with three legs in French, person. But obviously, if your market has now shrunk so much, and you can only recruit from inside, and you've seen at the same time a huge exodus, expatodus, they called it, a huge exodus of the expats outside of the region where they went back to their home countries. We saw two types of people leaving: the low-skilled people because they lost their job, they couldn't afford to stay, and the high-skilled people who lost their jobs and didn't want to have to pay to put their children through education, because you have to know that on average, let's say it's $10,000 to $15,000 per child per year just for education costs. So when you lose the employment and you lose that financing, which is typically only for the more senior positions, highly skilled people, plus you need to pay your healthcare by yourself, all of a sudden people were like, okay, maybe we should go back to our home country. At least our kids can go in most countries, they can go for free, unless it's university, but they have public education. So a lot of the highly skilled people who lost their job left during the summer as well, before the school year started again. So that market has shrunk. And what we see now is that on some positions, it seems that companies have to consider pay levels that they thought would be going down because the overall market is going down, but they still need to fight to find the right person. And so they might still have to pay. So it's not a general thing, but on a position per position level, that might be the situation. So I think that it's more about individual decisions. It's more about assessing the criticality of a position for the organization and really managing your budget, not on a global, like for all employees, overall holistic level, but more on an individual basis. So that's what I think is happening, at least in my part of the world.
So Sandrine, if I could ask you, and Peyman, if you can jump back in on this of audio, if not video and audio, let's talk about evaluating performance during COVID. That's really difficult, isn't it?
Yes, and I think there was a movement already to a realization that evaluating individual performance is very difficult, except maybe for some positions like in sales where people have a very specific like quota that they need to achieve and so on. But when you talk about support functions, positions like R&D and so on, where collaboration is so important, there was already some kind of an awakening on the difficulty of focusing on individual performance. Do the KPIs the objectives that we set at the beginning of the year, do they really make sense? Things are changing throughout the year and so on. So what we're starting to see is more and more discussion about moving away from individual performance being the main driver of incentive design towards more collective types of approaches, so more focus on team and maybe department or overall company. And we see also for some types of positions more focus on profit sharing types of schemes, which have the advantage of being self-funded, because if the company doesn't make a profit, it's not going to distribute anything. And I remember when I was working in Microsoft, my colleagues were telling me, because we have in France mandatory profit sharing and gain sharing by law, small amounts, but they're there. And they were like, oh, this is so communist, you're sharing everything. And I was like, profit sharing is the most capitalist thing you can do. If you don't make a profit, you don't give anything to anybody, and you only give a small portion of it to people. So it's very similar to stock ownership in some way, where you say we want employees to feel owners of the organization. I think if you share profit, people feel ownership as well, or at least engagement and involvement. So I think we're going to see in the coming years more focus on those kinds of solutions, and less of a push only on this myth that individual performance is the main driver of remuneration.
Oh, that's cool. Maryann, we're going to get you in just a sec. Paul, if I could ask you, Paul, if you could send the Google Meets link to Peyman email, maybe he could jump in a better connection by using the, not Google Meets, I meant
Microsoft Teams.
Be on Google Meet, not?
Is there, on the Zoom link, there are different ways of accessing this? There's an audio, there's a phone, and there's a one-tap thing. Is there another access?
I don't believe so.
Audio.
Yeah.
Sandrine, would you not agree that we would all have to be on Google Meet?
Yeah. Or maybe Peyman, or maybe if Peyman just does not switch on the video, he might have better sound. But the VPN is the challenge, right, in Iran? I know with my friends it's the same.
Yeah, I think if I turn out the video, I think we would have a better bandwidth. Hopefully. Sorry for this inconvenience, really. I feel ashamed. Anyway.
No, it's very good. And okay. I have to tell you that you're very clear and loud right now. So please continue.
Very good.
Yeah.
Sure. Going back to your question about the remuneration and the compensation in the region. In the region which we have most of our people in Iran, Iraq, and the CIS, as well as in Turkey. I think if I turn out the object which we faced in the past year, beside the COVID, it was the de-evaluation of the currency. especially in Iran, then in Iraq, and then in Turkey. All of these countries, they face a big challenges of the devaluation and the currency fluctuation in this region. That was a very hard on the company as well as on the people. The other thing, it was the repatriation of the expatriates from Iran and Iraq in a very rapid number, and a huge number of the people, they decided to leave the countries from Iran and from Iraq when the COVID hit, because their level of the healthcare support, it was very obviously for them, it was on assures for them. Then it was from the local point of view. I think the challenges we faced in the past, that was very many businesses, especially in the service sectors, they went to leave the countries for business. This we call it Horeca, hotel, restaurant, cafe business, which they lost a great deal of the business in the past over 400 days. In
having unfortunate connection again.
They lost a lot of. Do you have my voice?
Yes.
Pilgrims to Iraq. Yes, the pilgrims to Iraq was stopped, and they lost business there as well. And the service industry completely lost their all their investment, basically. The other topics which you touch point on the performance management, managing the home work from home and the performance management was a very new for all of us to learn how to manage the time and attendance as well as the performance management, especially for the professional staff. As mentioned, the salespeople, it was much easier to follow the performance quota and see how they are managing the situation. But on the other hand, for the professional staff, mostly who were working from home, it was a very difficult circumstances. One other challenges in, I mean, it's not related to the COVID or the fluctuation of the currency in the region, the lack of the transparency and the lack of information on the pay practices in the region, especially in Iran and in Iraq. There is no reliable salary surveys to rely on, and to be able to see how the market movements are and what are the practices, the real practices. These are the, I think, the topics or bullet points of the challenges on the pay practices. And we have seen a very unprecedented practices as well. For instance, in UAE, I think we faced for the first time, the government allow companies to cut pay, and it was unprecedented. I never we've seen it. Government allow businesses to reduce 25% to 35% of the salaries of the people, and that was very shocking for the people who were living in Dubai, especially the expatriate community. And most of them, they had a very challenging, especially as mentioned about the schooling, the healthcare and all that, which was very hard on them. In Iran and Iraq, the government did not allow any salary cuts, but they have come up with the various help for the companies from the support of the financial support. For instance, they allow the company who were not firing or laying off people to receive funds from the government, especially in Iran and in Iraq as well. That they give loans for every employees who were on payroll and to help the cash flow of the company. These are the, I think, in general, the practices which we face in past 400 days. One other thing was the payment of in our company, we introduced the payments of people who were on quarantine and they were at home on sick days because the Social Security were not sufficient for going or living by for the people, and the company for were faced with the pandemic and they were sick to get full salaries for the period of 2 weeks up to 1 month. And also we let all the senior people who were vulnerable for the COVID to stay at home and work from home. And these were the practices which I think we never had it experience in the past.
So, Sandrine, you've emphasized team incentives as a way to grow revenue or performance. Peyman, do you also do that? Have teams working together because of COVID, even though everybody's remote?
I mean, for us, working from home was very new. For many countries, in the past, I experienced, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, when I was with Nokia, we were very familiar and customized to work on the remote and be playing with our managing people in the remote places. But for Iran was very, very new. Even for the senior manager, they were not really customized or they accustomed to these practices. And many of the infrastructure was not supporting, including the internet.
Unfortunately, we've lost Peyman again. So let's continue. Maryann, what do you think of all this talk about team incentives and pay, measuring performance in these crazy times?
It's critical. It's really, I'm learning a lot from you guys. This is not my area of expertise, but it's important to recognize the difficulties that everyone is going through, employee or contractor or whatever, and to be sensitive to that. And just basically listen more carefully, because I think people get caught up in busyness and they don't take the time to really listen to what's going on. And I could give you many examples from my current situation, but I won't do that. Yeah, it's just, we'll get through this. We're already getting through this. People are getting vaccinated and things are moving on, but the whole idea of what's fair and what isn't fair needs to be really addressed. And I think employee experience in a company is also very critical.
So I want to ask Sandrine and Maryann and Peyman to use the chat on the bottom here. Look down, you see that? And send everyone your email or your LinkedIn so you can connect with Peyman and Sandrine and Maryann all together going forward. It's my job to bring people together and create an environment.
You do such a great job at that.
Well, yes. Thank you for showing up again. It makes, if I don't have an audience, I got nothing except me and Paul. So
I'm sure if it was just you and Paul, you could still do a great show.
That's true. I agree with that, Sandrine.
You're very kind.
Ed, you said I was a brilliant conversationalist.
Yes.
Yes, I know. You're even especially in a voiceover situation. So Sandrine, so your book is focusing in on pay for performance, I guess,
Yes,
but
yes.
not maybe individualized, maybe as a group.
So I'm working on the second revision of my upcoming book, and it's going to be mostly focused on employee promotions. The idea being that HR managers and line managers don't really receive any kind of guidance on that process on an annual basis. You can find lots of advice on how to do a salary review, how to decide how much to give to your employee, who should be eligible for a bonus, this kind of stuff. But you don't really find any really information about how to do promotions. And one of the things which I've noticed is that if you don't have, and especially for bigger organizations, obviously, a process to create a pool of eligible people who is based on criteria that are not subjective, but that are the same for everybody, then you can end up having a lot of bias and ending up as the main driver for promotions. So the criteria can be the common criteria. I also explore, more unusual criteria, an example of something which I put in place a few years back. And how then you can create a process which from this pool of eligible, because eligible doesn't mean that you get it. It means that you can be considered for it. And then, are you ready for it? Is there a position for it? Does the manager want to promote you? I mean, do you want to be promoted even? Because I've personally seen colleagues who refused some promotions. So I look into all that and how to create the process and the policy from an HR point of view, and give some advice to HR managers and line managers on how to handle some specific situations. So the advice is not for employees, it's not the kind of advice that you find on a lot of career websites, which is about, have your visibility, work on projects, these kind of things. Or the completely cynical approach, which is, like, be very nice to your boss just before the promotion time so that he will put you up for promotion. It's really more from an HR practical point of view, how to budget, how to prepare your lists, how to make sure that you don't forget somebody, and all this kind of stuff. So,
Sandrine, what's the name of your book?
I don't have a name yet. I've been thinking of the promotion conundrum, but I think conundrum is a word which is going to be surprising for non-native English speakers. And because I'm based in the GCC, I really think about that. So probably maybe the promotion challenge or something like that. Once I get closer, I might even ask, my audience between 3 or 4 titles and let them vote which one they prefer. You never know.
That's
promotion dilemma. How about dilemma?
I like it.
Yeah.
I'll take a note.
Yeah, Peyman, what do you think?
I think it's a very interesting concept, and I really cannot wait to see this book. And I hope that would be available from Amazon or somewhere, which I can get it.
That is the plan. Yes, yes.
Okay, and the one thing I can say, I have along with what I have heard, I have some practices in Iran on this issue of the promotion, and I can share with you offline whenever you have time.
Okay.
Especially this talent pool, we have done it in 2 companies, and I can share with you our practices.
Okay, I'll take you up on that. Thank you, Peyman.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So Peyman, when you were with the telecommunications company, were they implementing or beginning to implement 5G?
No. At that time, we were in going from 2G to 3G, and then later to the 4G. At that time, it was just more of the scientific papers on the 5Gs.
Yeah,
very,
I
very
get.
academic at that time.
Yeah. Okay, I get it. And so, to
Very,
what extent, Peyman, are you using Zoom or whatever it is more common in your area about teaching, teaching your employees new things while they're working from home?
uh, I can make it very line between Iran and the rest of the countries. Because in Iran, we are facing two challenges. The sanctions from the US towards us and the sanction Iran has towards the rest of the world. The sanctions from the Iran towards the rest of the world is most of the social networks are banned, especially Facebook and so forth. Twitters, Facebooks are banned and you cannot reach them because there are filters. The other side is the Zoom and many applications from the US are banned for Iran. For instance, right now I have to use a VPN to be connected through Zoom. And that's the way I can connect it. And that's the causing a poor connection as well. In Iran, there are two practices. Number one is
we lost him.
Ah, the cliffhanger.
Oh my gosh.
All right, tune in next week for the next chapter.
I think he might have said Telegram, because I know that Telegram is very, very very much used in Iran.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So Telegram is like what, a chat?
It's
like WhatsApp.
It's like WhatsApp. Yeah, it's like WhatsApp basically.
Okay.
sorry.
Peyman, we lost
Yeah, it's a very bad. I mean, it's very bad. I mean, I was saying that there are two sanctions: the Iranian and in the U.S.
Yes.
And also there are the practices in the region as well. For instance, in Dubai, you are not able to connect to the video calls on the WhatsApp.
Yes.
In Iran, in our practices in the company, we are using two technology. Number one is a home software, developed in Iran, and are very much copied from the international practices and are local softwares for the collaboration tools. The other one, which is more stable, is Skype for Business and Skype for Business and Skype, the regular Skype. It's much more stable and it doesn't need to go to the VPN to get connected.
Oh.
And these are the practices which we use.
Peyman, I have a question. Do you use, Ed, do you use in Iran technology from China, for example, because I know that they have Weibo and other things, and they're super advanced on online payments, virtual payments, and so on, much more than many other places in the world, actually.
The Chinese software has not been really practiced in Iran, because the China is very much homegrown practices. It's the same as the Russia. For instance, in Russia, everybody is using for instance, it's very interesting. In Russia, we are not allowed to use LinkedIn. I mean, these countries, they have their own policies, and it's very difficult to manage the communication between the different part of the world. In Iran, mostly we are using like Russia, we are using the Iranian version of the software, and some they are using the not copyrighted, protected, what they call it, freewares and the sharewares, which are available in the public domain.
Interesting stuff, boy.
For instance, most companies in Iran, instead of Windows, they are using Linux.
Wow.
It's it's a different world now these days.
Yeah.
And that adds a layer of complexity to the challenges you had to face. I mean, the whole world had to moved to a more digital world all of a sudden last year. But in your case, it's even complicated by those, let's say, technological, let's call them technological, not political considerations. I mean, makes it even more difficult from a work point of view, business point of view.
Yeah.
That's exactly the level of the complexity for our technology companies is very, very high, especially even for us, which are we have a very spread practices and the businesses all over the region. It's a very, very difficult to overcome these technological barriers.
Yes.
So Peyman, as we come to a close here in the next few minutes, again, thank you, of course, but you're celebrating springtime now with, I see,
Yes.
foods and attitudes. Why don't you give us a cultural lesson and tell us what this is all about?
Iranian, it's more than 3,000 years history behind this, celebrating the beginning of the spring. It's called Nowruz, a new day, and we are celebrating our calendar. It's based on the solar system. It's like a Gregorian, but it has a different month tied to it, and it's divided by the 4 seasons. And the spring season starts exactly with which is the Earth passes the north hemisphere of the Earth passes through the spring, and that's the exact hours, the minutes, and the seconds, which is the Earth passes through winter to spring, and it's called Nowruz. It's celebrated. It's almost 15 days holidays. Most of the offices are closed for 4 days. It's everybody wearing a new clothes, and they clean up the houses, and it's a lot of celebrations around this time of the year. And it's really interesting. Last year it was very unusual because everybody stayed at home. There was no movement of the people, and they were not able to practice the customs which they have, family and relatives, and having festivals. And this year, despite of the COVID, everybody have accustomed to this situation, and they ignore, and all the ceremonies are back to the normal. I don't know what would be consequences after this, but now the people are more, I think they are tired of being at home. And now they are out, they are shopping, they are having a lot of festivals, and they go to meet relatives, and they have all kind of, I mean, even the travel, it was a restriction about 2 months back. The travel restrictions stopped the travel restrictions. Only there were a few provinces they were stopped. They have put the stop on the travel, but the rest of the country, it's now the travel is free, and there is no restriction.
And I know, and I've noticed, I was gifted a painting, a piece of art, actually, more than a painting, that was done by an Iranian person, which depicts Nowruz a few years back. And, you know, there's the table, and there's the mirror on it, and the light, and there are a number of those symbolisms that we do have in the Christian, you know, the eggs we see. If you think about eggs in Easter, the colored eggs and so on, it's also a tradition that we have, and I think which is coming back from these I don't know how to pronounce it, Zoroastrian
Zoroastrian.
customs, from the old times that have been then, taken over by the whole culture. And I have some Indian friends that are also celebrating it. It's not just in Iran, it's in a whole part of the world that used to be part of the Persian Empire, where they still celebrate it. And spring cleaning, I mean, that's kind of universal now, like it's like everywhere we know about spring cleaning, right? So I think it's great. And I wish you happy Nowruz, Peyman.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And of course, this time of year is approaching Passover here in the Jewish background. And it's funny how everybody does their own thing, and yet it's all for the same basic idea.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very interesting that the Jew, Christian, and Zoroastrian and Muslims are very cohabited in Iran. I don't know if you have heard or not. There is a city in my hometown next to my city. It's called Iran, Jerusalem. And the people, they come for a pilgrim there every year, all the Jew people, and it's background, it's called. It's very interesting, and people are very, very interested in this part of the world. And I think to add what Sandra was mentioning, it's the Santa Claus. We have exact, we call it Amu Nowruz, the Uncle Nowruz. It's wears the same red robe, and it has a white beard, and it's very, very similar.
Yeah,
exactly.
Why not recycle the good stuff, if it's
exactly
not broken, why should you fix it? Just keep it.
Yeah, I mean, the civilization started from this part of the world, and I think the people, they can have more fun on their common things rather than on differences.
Yes.
Amen. Amen. Yes. All right, Sandrine, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Peyman, I love having you. Please come back, and
thank you.
Let's continue this. Let's continue this wonderful rapport, bringing together good people, and let's
continue. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye bye now.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.